everywhere that you are joining us from. You are so special to us. Yes, we value you and you are so special to us. Our Delta and HLF staff, we welcome you. Special mention goes to all our executives. Before we go any further, allow me to give you the rules for this meeting. Make sure that you are always on mute at all times. Make sure that you are muted. And make sure that you have got a pen and a notebook for you to be able to write notes on. In case you are leaving us briefly, make sure that you switch off your video and you switch it on when you are back. And of course, the chat box that is at the bottom of your screen is available for your use. So ladies and gentlemen, let's start right now by typing whatever we have learned in the previous sessions, because the chat box is for our use. All right, so as a norm, we start by making sure that we pray to God before we start any session. So I will just hand over this time to Michelle Mashawawi, who is going to give us a word of prayer before we start. Michelle, over to you. Okay, is Michelle connected? Sibabaso, you can come in.
All right. Sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right. Good afternoon, Dynamite. My name is Michelle Mashawawi from Lawayo Poly, and I'll say a word of prayer. Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we come before your throne this afternoon. We want to thank you for bringing us all together. We want to thank you for good health. We want to thank you for having guided us throughout this week. We want to thank you for your blessings, for your power, and for your love. I would like to take this opportunity, Lord, to pray that everything that we learned today, Jehovah, may help us, may take us a step further into taking our lives back, Father. Father, I pray that we may keep these lessons and that we may be able to impact these lessons to others that we meet in this walk of life. Father, Lord, I want to take this opportunity to pray for all A-level and all-level students. Lord, I'm praying for your guidance. I'm praying for your wise counsel. I'm praying that they may remember everything that they have learned and studied. I'm praying for your guidance and for your wise counsel, Lord. I'm praying for your wisdom. I am praying for revelation of knowledge, Jehovah. I'm praying for the spirit of discernment, even as they continue to prepare for other exams. I pray, my Father, that tonight, this afternoon's session may be powerful and impactful, Lord. We pray all this in the mighty name of the Son and our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen and amen. Thank you, Michelle, for giving us that word of prayer. So ladies and gentlemen, today I just want to know, how are you feeling? Can you type in the chat box? How are you feeling? I just want to know how you are feeling. Let's type in the chat box. I want to know how you are feeling today. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? Gonizashe, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? Let's type in the chat box. How are you feeling? Keep the comments coming. How are you feeling today? Keketo, how are you feeling today? Nyasha says, Nyasha and Belinda, they say they are feeling excited. Michelle says she's feeling excited. Yes, let's keep them coming. How are you feeling today? Tendai, how are you feeling? Dudus, guys, all of us are feeling excited. Munyarad is feeling great. Okay, Laxon is feeling relaxed. Brendan says he's feeling what? Keketo says she's feeling excited, feeling good. Chennai Machoba. Okay. Divine, hello, how are you? Okay, so we have been learning about mental health for the past 6 series, and today marks our 7th series on mental health, in order for us to learn more, in order for us to make sure that we live our lives and we take control of our lives, and we live our lives to the best potential that we can. Okay, so I also want to see you typing in the chat box about what you have been learning in the past 6 series. So just type in the chat box what you've been learning in the previous sessions. I want to see. Okay, keep the comments coming. What have you learned? What are your key takeaways from the previous sessions? Sorry, Sungiso, who says she's sick. Very sorry. Get well soon. We'll pray for you. All right. So Tulo says he or she has learned that feelings are not facts. Okay. Okay. Feelings are not facts. Who else? All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to continue with our 12-part series on mental health, dubbed "Take Back Your Life Today" with Miss Joanna Masiyiwa. Miss Joanna Masiyiwa, I will just hand over this time to you in order for you to take us through our 12-part series, our 7th session of the 12-part series of Take Back Your Life Today. Miss Joanna, over to you.
Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with all of you for another exciting session. Let me just share my screen with all of you. Okay, great. So you can all see my screen, correct? I'm assuming that's yes. Anyways,
yes, we can, Miss Joanna.
I realized I just made a little typo and actually put week 8. See, I'm getting ahead of myself. But welcome to week 7 of Take Back Your Life Today, where we're going to be continuing with the conversation we had about codependency. I just want to put a caveat that codependency is a really, really, really important concept to understand, because a lot more of us experience it than we realize. And so please, please, please put your questions in the chat box. And then if we have time at the end, I will look to the chat box for questions. But first, we'll just do a recap, because I know last week we had a different session. So codependency really is a series of symptoms that indicate an intense focus on controlling relationships and a lack of awareness of both self, both of which have likely been perpetuated by abusive situations in the past. And now we've talked about trauma in previous weeks and how you have little t's and big T's. And so when it uses words like abuse, there is a lot, it's an umbrella term for a lot of behaviors that are deemed not okay that may have happened to you in your childhood. So that can range from being consistently yelled at to being physically abused, or even bullying at school. And so it's important to understand the wide range. So I'm going to take us through the 5 symptoms of codependency again, but this time we're going to go a little bit deeper, and I'm going to give you specific examples of how those kind of appear in our day-to-day lives. And then we're going to go into how we can actually take care of ourselves, take our lives back, and recover from being codependent. And so again, I ask you as we go through to listen for the similarities and not the differences. Very often we can listen to a presentation and think, that doesn't apply to me. And very often also not everything will apply to you, but listen for the things that are similar, because you may be able to help yourself or someone else in your life by what you hear. So just for a recap, our core symptoms of codependency are, firstly, difficulty experiencing appropriate levels of self-esteem, difficulty setting functional boundaries, difficulty owning our own reality, difficulty acknowledging and meeting our own needs and wants and being interdependent with others. And then finally, difficulty experiencing and expressing our reality moderately. I'm just going to move something so I can make sure that I can see everyone. I'm just checking that you're all... Okay, great. So a lot of my research from today is from personal experience, from attending a group called Codependent Anonymous, and from 2 very important books to me. But today's going to really focus, last week focused more on Facing Codependency by Pia Melody. And today we're going to go through the framework of Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. It says how to stop controlling others and start caring for yourself. So the term codependency was originally created to describe the significant other of an alcoholic or an addict. This is because it became evident that just as the person with the addictive behavior had this, it became evident that the alcoholic had addictive symptoms and behaviors their family member and partner also shared. But over time, it's codependency has begun to be understood as a much broader term than simply being involved with someone who's a substance abuser. In fact, the symptoms are actually not the problem at all. So there's definitions and understanding of codependency, but it actually really defines a series of adaptive relationship skills used to function in relationships that are unhealthy. So it's really the coping mechanisms that we might adapt in order to survive toxic relationships or relationship dynamics that we don't necessarily find safe. Codependency reflects an inner brokenness and a foundation that is people-based rather than God-based. So what's interesting is even with codependency, and the fellowships and the understanding of codependency, God is really at the center of it. And it's really, if you're supposed to look at it as a circle, we're at the center, and at the center of us is something. For people who suffer with codependency, at the center of their circle is other people, where to really live the best life, you're at the center of your circle should be God. So this foundation drives codependents to find someone or something outside of themselves to meet their deepest emotional and spiritual needs. It puts people in the place of God. Codependent behavior usually is formed as a coping mechanism in dysfunctional family systems. So that's basically a family operating outside of God's plan is how Melody Beattie explains it. But to explain it more clearly, it's an environment where the family system has not developed into either there's parental figures missing or the family system has developed in a way that is not conducive to the development of the individual into being a whole person. So the codependent appears caring, concerned, loving, and responsible and continues to solve problems for the family. So if you're the codependent in your family, well, there could be several codependents, you feel the burden is on you to fix whatever problems the family is facing. So whether it's a parent that's suffering from depression or a sibling that has an addiction or a special needs family member, you feel it is your responsibility to take on the burdens of everybody else. The codependent role in the family relationship is to care for the needs of others, but in the process, the person experiences self-neglect. So a codependent might appear very healthy, strong, and without need or assistance, but to the outside observer, but their problems, which are quite extensive, actually, appear to extend to other people in their life that struggle with addiction, violence, and mental illness. So you may, in comparison to the other people in their life, the codependent may seem to be on top of things like this person is so helpful, this person is so caring, but in actual fact, the way in which they're overextending themselves is becoming harmful to them. So as we go through these slides, we're going to really understand Melody Beattie's framework for understanding the symptoms of codependency, more specifically under the umbrella of Pia Melody's research that we've covered last week, the 5 core symptoms. And then we're going to get into really how we can heal ourselves and move beyond feeling codependent. So difficulty experiencing appropriate levels of self-esteem. As we talked about the last week, it's quite self-explanatory, the symptom, just because self-esteem is the way that we see ourselves, the way that we perceive ourselves, and the way that we carry ourselves. And so people who are codependent may try to please others instead of themselves. So this might look like, in my personal example, I very much was a people pleaser for a very long time. And so that may have looked like me being agreeable to other people's opinions when I actually didn't agree, but I thought that by agreeing and not sharing how I felt, that everybody else would like me more. So people who are codependent might feel safest giving and are attracted to needy people. They blame others for their feelings and struggles. So you may want to be around people who need you or people who are, when you're in a relationship dynamic that's uneven. And how that happened for me was I definitely ended up in friendship circles and friend groups out of my codependency that were uneven. And so I was either helping the person by giving all of my time to them. I remember I had one specific best friend who I would spend hours on the phone with. And for me, I felt needed in those moments. But then I would also resent that friend because it was taking up so much of my time, and also because I wasn't getting the same care back. I felt like I was giving, and not getting anything back. And so when that's happening, you're being codependent, you're not giving for the right reasons. So codependents also have little to no self-worth and border on self-hatred, feel overwhelmed with guilt and shame. So as we spoke about, guilt is I made a mistake, and shame is I am a mistake. Often a person who experiences codependency will get artificial feelings of self-worth from helping others. And so because your self-worth isn't coming from within, you reach out to other things around you to try and fulfill the deep hole that is missing of self-esteem within your own life. And so for me, that was school. And so I would work really hard in school. And then when my parents would tell me, oh, you're amazing, you're a genius, then I would feel good about myself. But it would only last a certain amount of time. And I didn't have self-esteem on my own. My esteem came from other people complimenting me. And so I was trapped in this cycle of people pleasing, but the people pleasing wasn't enough for me to really feel pleased with myself. So the next symptom of codependency, as we discussed, is difficulty setting functional boundaries. So people who don't, as we talked about, their boundaries, walls, and there's boundaries are the way in which we protect ourselves internally and externally. And so we have spiritual boundaries, physical boundaries, sexual boundaries, religious boundaries, and oftentimes a person who's codependent has difficulty setting these functional boundaries to take care of themselves and to exist in relationships with people that are safe, comforting, and fulfilling. So people who are codependent may feel responsible for other people's needs, feelings, thoughts, behaviors, and well-being. And now I want you all to understand that feeling responsible for somebody else's thoughts and feelings is codependent. It's not the way that we should function. Yes, we should have empathy to the feelings of someone else, but unless someone shares their thoughts with us,
Good afternoon. Have we lost Miss Joanna, or it's just my internet?
It looks like we have lost Miss Joanna, Pastor Nashi.
apologies, load shedding happened, and so I lost all of you. But let me continue. Could someone let me know where, just in the chat, if you write the last thing that you heard me say? Okay, are you all able to see my screen again?
Yes, we can, Miss Joanna.
Okay. I'm just checking. Wait, was the last thing I said, was the last thing you heard low self-esteem? Okay, well, I'll just start again with this specific challenge of codependency. So one of the challenges of codependency is difficulty setting functional boundaries. And so a person who doesn't set functional boundaries may feel responsible for other people's needs, feelings, thoughts, behaviors, and well-being. And so, as I said earlier, you may have not heard me, but one of the things that's very important to understand is that we are not responsible for other people's thoughts and feelings. We can't control other people's thoughts and feelings. And so for me, for the longest time, I thought that I could. So often I would use tactics to try, I would be doing other people's thinking for them. And as a consequence, I would use tactics to try and control them in order to get the reaction from the person that I wanted. So how this may have played out was I would be texting with a friend and the friend wasn't responding to me. And I would then suddenly be thinking, oh no, this person hates me. They're not my friend. They don't want to be friends with me anymore. And I would work myself up into a complete state. And then hours later, the person would respond and say, oh, I was just having dinner with my family. Oh, or I was off my phone, or my phone died. And I would feel ridiculous for having had this entire mental process. But what I was doing was thinking for other people, was making assumptions about other people's thoughts and feelings and behaviors without actually getting information from them directly. So another part of difficulty setting functional boundaries is often codependents feel almost forced to help others, regardless of whether they actually want to help. And so this, again, is this feeling of you are responsible for other people. And please let me know in the chat if you can hear me, because it's raining quite hard here. So I'm just a bit worried about people not being able to hear me. But anyways, you may feel very responsible for other people's emotions, feel as if though everybody requires you, and you feel burnt out because of how much you're helping the people around you. Another thing is that codependents say yes when they really mean no, doing things they don't want to do. So I fell victim to this so many times. There were moments where I felt like if I said no, the person wouldn't like me anymore. And that's not protecting my own boundaries. I should be able to say no, and it be okay, and that not change the relationship between me and my friend, or me and my partner, or me and my family. But for me, for the longest time when I was young, when I first got to university, I would often say, if I needed to study and I hadn't finished my problem sets or done my readings, and someone asked me, oh, do you want to go get coffee? I felt obligated to say yes because I wanted people to like me. And then I didn't study. And then when the test came around, remember, I got that 56% on that economics exam, things like that would happen. And then I would resent the people around me and think, if only I hadn't gone to have coffee with X friend, if only I hadn't gone to that party. But at the time I said yes, because I felt like I needed to please the people around me. Finally, codependents don't know what they want or need, or feel their wants are unimportant. And this one's really important to understand, because there's a very big difference between wants and needs. And sometimes codependents are not even able to identify what their needs are, which are affection and love, physical security, emotional security, and wants, which might be a relationship or a certain career. Codependents may believe that their wants and needs are intertwined. So now what that might look like is, for me, I felt like I needed to do well in school. And if I didn't, I would be less loved by my parents, by my peers. If I wasn't the smart genius girl, then I wasn't anyone, or I wasn't valuable. And so that was not me not understanding that I wanted to be smart and do well in school, but I was mixing it up as a need, and it was putting more pressure on me, and over time building resentment towards others when I wasn't able to reach the high standards that were unachievable that I had set for myself. So the next one is difficulty owning their reality. So we talked about this one, and I think there was a little bit of confusion last time when I explained it as a concept. So here are just some more examples of what it means to have difficulty owning your own reality. So codependents may appear rigid and controlled. And so what's interesting is we often talk about a person is type A and they have everything together, and they are juggling all these things and doing it perfectly. It's actually been found that perfectionism, the desire to, and not even the desire, then the need and desire to do everything perfectly is a symptom of codependency, because the reason people are doing that is because they want to be seen by others as having it all figured out. And having that mentality is not necessarily conducive to being happy and living a life that is fulfilled. So codependents might worry excessively over little things, lose sleep over other people's problems or behaviors. I don't know if that's ever happened to any of you, but there's been times when I am just worrying about someone else's issue that I'm not in control of, and it's taking up all my mental space. And that's me not having emotional boundaries. That's me not having the ability to separate my needs and my wants from somebody else's. I may have a friend that's in trouble financially, for example, and be worrying how they're going to get the money, they're in debt. But why am I putting myself in a state of that's bad for my own mental and physical health because I'm so worried about someone else? That's when worry for someone else becomes unhealthy and you're not owning your own reality. So codependence may go to the extreme length to control others. So for example, if you're in a relationship with an addict, you may start hiding the alcohol. You may start flushing it down the toilet, forcing the person to go to therapy. It may even be minor things such as trying to control if you're friends with someone or in a relationship with someone or a family member who is overeating, you may start trying to put them on a diet because you're trying to control somebody else's behavior and you're making someone else the priority in the way that you exist. And now I did that a lot of the time. I had someone in my life who was always messing up, doing badly in school, just really making poor decisions. And I took that on as my responsibility. And so I would do their homework for them. I would try to tutor them as well, because I thought I'm helping this person to be the best. But in doing that, I was allowing that person to not take responsibility for their own reality. And as a consequence, I was building resentment. And it affected my relationship with this person who's very close to me because I was codependent and because I was enabling their behavior. The next one is difficulty acknowledging and meeting their own needs and wants and being interdependent with others. So codependents may struggle with debilitating depression and wonder why they can't get anything done. And the reason for this is because you're so invested in everybody else's life, you can't take care of yourself. You may try to control events and people through helplessness and guilt. So feeling like you've done something wrong and then feeling helpless and then try to control events and people. Codependents are very manipulative people. And it's not a manipulation out of trying to hurt others. It's trying to control situations that we ultimately have no control of. Coercion, threats, advice giving, manipulation, domination. Oftentimes giving unsolicited advice is a codependent thing. If a person didn't ask you what you think, why are you telling them what to do with their lives? So another thing is codependents may pretend circumstances aren't as bad as they are. So an inability to actually reconcile with the truth of what's happening. So if you're in a relationship with a person who has emotional problems or addiction issues, you may try to convince yourself it's not as bad as it is because you can't accept reality and you can't meet your own needs for what's appropriate. And then finally, codependents desperately seek love and approval, often from people incapable of providing it. And that's one of the real difficulties of codependency is that we're in a constant pursuit for love and we're looking for it outside of ourselves. And we end up being attracted to people who are incapable. Either it's a parent or a parental figure who, sorry, I just saw something weird on the video. Either it's a parent or a parental figure who we're trying to consistently please and just can't give us that affirmation, or a friend or a partner or a teacher in school. Apologies. And then finally, the last symptom is difficulty experiencing and expressing their reality moderately. So this may include loss in interest in their own lives when they enter into relationships. Have you ever had that friend that they get a new boyfriend and they suddenly start talking like the person, acting like them, eating the same foods, only hanging out with that person's friend? That person is likely a codependent because you're not able to create those boundaries and separate yourself from someone else, and as a consequence, express your reality in a moderate way. And by moderate, I mean in a way that is leveled. It's normal to spend time with, when you get into a relationship, spend time with that other person and maybe do some of the things they're interested in. But when you find yourself becoming someone else, whether it's a friend or a boyfriend, when you latch onto someone else and you take on their personality, that oftentimes is an issue that has to do with codependency. So you might latch onto whatever or whoever you think can provide you happiness. You don't say what you mean, and you only say what you think others want to hear, which goes back to doing others thinking for them. And so if I'm in a codependent relationship, I may think, oh, if someone is asking me for advice and saying, oh, I really want to lose weight, and because I want to stay friends with them, I say, you look great, you don't need to lose weight, when they're actually very unhealthy. That is not helping that other person, but it's helping me selfishly. So because I want to please that person for a brief moment, but in reality, I make myself feel bad and the other person because I'm not expressing reality in a moderate way. So codependents are people who are rushing to please. Finally, the last two, codependents struggle with setting and maintaining healthy boundaries, as we talked about before, and feeling controlled by others' emotions, namely anger. Now, we're going to talk about anger because it's actually the way that we understand anger is not necessarily how it manifests in our lives on a day-to-day basis. And anger is quite an insidious emotion, which means that it shows up secretly in really harmful ways. We always associate, I think, anger with outbursts, but anger is the root of depression. It is the root of resentment. It really is and it's the root of codependency, really. So we'll be able to understand that as we continue. So now I just wanted to read you this quote from Melody Beattie from the book Codependent No More. She says, codependency is many things. It's a dependency on people, on their moods, behaviors, sickness or well-being, and their love. It is a paradoxical dependency. Codependents appear to be dependent upon, but they are actually dependent. So by that, she means people who are codependent may seem like the responsible one, but in actual fact, they're the one that needs somebody else. They look strong, but feel helpless. They appear controlling, but in reality are controlled themselves, sometimes by an illness such as alcoholism. And so it's really important to understand addiction and codependency work hand in hand. And I'm going to go more into addiction and the specific cultural addictions that we face on the African continent next week. But I thought understanding codependency first is vital. So first we'll talk about attachment and then we'll get into anger. Wait. Okay. Oh, I think I accidentally deleted my anger slide. No, I didn't. It's coming up. Sorry. So we'll talk about attachment first because attachment is a big part of understanding codependency. So simply put, attachment is becoming overly involved and sometimes hopelessly entangled with others. We may worry to the point of obsessing. We may become reactive caretakers and emotionally dependent. Attachment boils down to worrying too much about someone else, which helps nothing and is a complete waste of energy. The main problem, over-attachment to others, results in detachment from ourselves. So I'll give you an example. I had a friendship where I was very attached to that person and sought that person for all my approval. So when I needed to make a decision, I would run it by that person. If that person was doing something, I would try to please this specific person. And I noticed that over time, it wasn't just that relationship. It was all my relationships. But that relationship was the most extreme example. And so I thought, oh, if I just stop being friends with this person, I'll stop being so attached to others. But that didn't happen. I realized that I was just doing it in minor ways in all my relationships and allowing everything outside of me to control how I felt, how I thought, and how I behaved. So in order to really try to begin to think about how do we release ourselves from codependency and heal ourselves from within, we need to understand detachment. So detachment is detaching from a personal problem, and ideally it's done in love. That's another thing that I want to emphasize is that detachment is done from a place of love. It's not a cold turkey shutting off and cutting someone off, which I had done in that previous relationship where I thought I was detaching from them, but in actual fact, I wasn't. Detachment is mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically disengaging ourselves from unhealthy entanglements in another person's life and problems. Detachment is essentially setting boundaries. It's being able to recognize what you need and what you want. It really encapsulates the opposite of codependency. And so I have a little bit more just to talk about detachment. I thought this quote from the book is really great too. It says, detachment is based on the premise that each person is responsible for himself, that we can't solve problems that aren't ours to solve, and that worrying doesn't help. At the moment, I'm going through this book called Overcoming Anxiety by Helen Kennelly, and it's a really excellent book. It's a workbook. So it talks about unhelpful patterns of thinking, biased patterns of thinking, and then it provides exercises where you can start to understand how to overcome anxiety. Anxiety is something that is also quite harmful, and a lot of people who are codependent face, because in that pursuit to be what we perceive other people as wanting us to be, we lose ourselves. And that's happened to me time and time again. But I've been able to heal from my codependency by, honestly, I'll talk a little bit more about my journey with codependency in a second after we talk about anger, but I've been able to heal from it through attending a program called Codependence Anonymous. That's free, it's online, and there's also in-person meetings. You just Google in your area. And also from allowing myself to detach from other people, but in a way that is loving and kind. So, codependence and emotions. So as we've probably recognized, emotions play a huge role in the way that codependence function. And it's understanding our emotions that will allow us to address how the way that we feel might be inhibiting us in certain relationships, and thus hurting our mental health. So here's just a few. One of the things codependents do is that we have unhealthy lies about anger that we commonly believe. So if, for example, a codependent person may feel like it's not okay to feel angry. And so something may happen that's minor, and you've characterized anger as this emotion that you associate with the Hulk type of behavior. And you tell yourself it's not okay to feel angry in this situation. Number one, I want to emphasize, someone once told me that every emotion is okay to feel. That's why we have them. They're feelings and we're not in control of them, and it is absolutely okay to feel them. Although feelings are not facts, it is okay to feel sad. It is okay to feel angry. It is okay to feel jealous. It is okay to feel happy. They're just feelings. How you act on those feelings is what shows is what people will judge your character based off of, and how you also judge your own character, but that's for a different time. So codependents commonly believe that people will leave us if we get angry with them. Now, I had such a fear of abandonment for the longest time. And so I felt like I had to suppress my emotions because I didn't want to deal with the fallout for what I thought would happen if I expressed to someone else that I was displeased by what they had done. Codependents also might believe that others should never feel angry towards them. And so they're so afraid of someone else feeling angry to them that they'll really do anything to prevent people from feeling angry. Another thing that codependents may believe about anger that's not true is that if others get angry, it must be our fault and fixing it is our responsibility. Again, as I've previously talked about, we are not responsible for other people's feelings, and feeling responsible for someone else's feelings is a symptom of codependency. And it is something that we can heal from if we learn to detach. So another thing that codependents might believe that about anger that's not true is that if we feel angry, someone else made us feel that way and that they're responsible for fixing it. Something that I learned from my therapist is that she says to me, never say, you make me feel to another person, because feelings are a response to a stimulus, whether positive or negative, that is really a chemical reaction within our bodies. And so when something happens, she taught me a format of saying in conflict, if I had a fight with my sister, I would say, when you did X, I felt X. And that's really helped me communicate in a way that I'm naming the fact of what something happened and naming the feeling that I have that belongs to me. By saying, when you did this, you make me feel, you're putting the responsibility of your feelings on somebody else, which is just not fair and not really healthy. And then finally, codependents believe that if someone else feels angry with us, that person doesn't love us and the relationship has to end. Now, these examples illustrate, I want to also say, is the extreme versions of codependency. Like everything, there are people who have it to the extreme, and then there are also people who have more moderate versions of codependency. And so, like I said before, listen for similarities, not differences. So here are Melody Beatty's tips on how to deal with anger. Firstly, she says, acknowledge any lies you brought in about anger and emotions in general. Sorry, I've numbered this really weirdly. When she says acknowledge lies, it means things that you have told yourself or allowed yourself to manifest in your set of beliefs that are not accurate. So this isn't lies like actual, this isn't lies telling lies. It's more beliefs that are untrue, that are unhealthy for you. And then secondly, feel the emotions along with any underlying emotions like fear or hurt. Again, like I said, it's important to feel our emotions because once we feel them, we can get through them. But when we repress them, and don't address them, we really allow them to continue to take over our lives. 4, acknowledge your thoughts that come along with the feeling. So for example, if I'm feeling angry, I acknowledge those thoughts. And that's where mindfulness, which we previously talked about, comes in, because you live in the moment and you say to yourself, wow, I'm feeling angry right now. It's because my sister took the last blanket and now I have to wear just a jersey and I'm cold. And I feel angry because of that. Or if it's more serious, I feel angry right now because my professor did not adequately prepare me for the exam and I'm worried about how I'm going to do. You're allowed to feel angry and you're allowed to acknowledge why you feel angry. You don't have to suppress those feelings of anger. And then next, make responsible decisions about what to do about your anger. So it's not productive when angry to throw something or scream in someone's face. And yes, anger is an emotion that comes on very strong, but that's why we practice mindfulness and living in the moment. And we acknowledge our thoughts, acknowledge the feeling, and then we're able to come up with a solution. I used to sometimes get really, really angry. And sometimes I still do. I have a short fuse, I'm not going to lie. But when I'm in a situation where I feel angry, I have learned to say, I feel my emotions becoming out of control. It is no longer productive for me to stay in this conversation. I need to remove myself. Because in those moments, I know that if I act on my anger in an unproductive way, I will hurt myself and the other people around me. So even when I'm in my most volatile state, I will say, I feel unsafe in this situation. I feel my emotions becoming out of control. I need to be removed from this situation. And then finally, there's 2 more. Choose not to let anger control you, both your anger and anyone else's. I think it's very easy to get swept up in an emotion. And I've been there before where I've had moments where sadness just takes control, or anger just takes control, and it feels like I can't get out of it. But again, by being mindful and recognizing and acknowledging the thoughts associated with my feelings, I'm able to move through them. And then finally, openly and honestly discuss your anger. For me, the biggest thing that I've learned in the past couple of years as I've really taken my mental health into my own hands is being open and honest with people about my feelings. Be it the fact that I'm angry, be it that I'm sad, be it that I'm feeling shame or guilt, I communicate with the people around me because it really helps me to stay authentic to myself, but also to not be controlled by what I think other people may think about me. And it's not that what other people think about me doesn't matter to me. It just doesn't control me anymore. And so finally, Actually, not finally. So I said, what is a relationship? I meant to write, what is a healthy relationship? And so codependency is really about relationships. And so I just wanted to illustrate in a few bullet points what a healthy relationship looks like. A healthy relationship allows space for love and affection. Allows space for love and affection, respect and honor. Individuals feel free and safe to live life true to themselves, and both provide and receive space for independence. A healthy relationship has healthy respect and admiration. It's free from manipulation and coercion, and it's replaced by respect and admiration. Each person makes their own decision and allows the other person to do the same. It holds space for others' thoughts and feelings. And then finally, each person makes, yeah, I said that already. Sorry, I was reading from my notes. But anyways, the reason that I wanted to illustrate what a healthy relationship looks like is that I think that sometimes our wires can get crossed and we begin to feel like what's healthy in a relationship is what's actually codependent, i.e., putting somebody else completely before my own feelings, trying to please them at every given junction. And that's not necessarily what a healthy relationship looks like. And so the biggest thing that has been helpful for me, and one of the things that I learned from the book by Melody Beattie, Codependent No More, is the way to treat codependency is really self-love and self-care. So self-care is about parenting yourself. It's about taking care of yourself the way you need and maybe didn't get when you were younger. So the idea of reparenting oneself, there's a lot of amazing books about them. And at the end of the series, I'll release a list of must-read books and free online PDFs so that everyone can access them. But reparenting your inner child is looking back at the ways that maybe you didn't receive the love that you wanted and allowing yourself to feel that love. So it may be something as simple as taking yourself to a park and enjoying the sun and having that moment for yourself. Self-care is also about putting an end to the theme so that we can get to know and love ourselves. So it's about putting an end to the themes that are associated with negativity. It's putting an end to the theme of anger, putting an end to themes that control our lives and narratives that we tell ourselves about ourselves that aren't necessarily true. Often people think self-care is putting on a face mask or doing your nails or washing your hair. And those things are acts of self-care, but self-care really comes from within and is about making tangible decisions to take your own life into your hands and live life authentically and with respect for yourself. It's about recognizing that I must consider the rights and freedoms of others, and recognizing that you respect and value other people and allow them to be themselves. Because as codependents, in our attempt to control the situation, we aren't really allowing another person to be themselves, and we're not really allowing ourselves to be authentic to who we are. And then finally, self-care is identifying our needs. I think this one is the most important one. And as we spoke about, people who are codependent struggle to distinguish between their needs and wants, and aren't able to live their best life because they are confusing needs with wants and searching for other people to fulfill those for them. So self-care is identifying those and your needs and wants, vocalizing them, and taking steps to see that they're met. Codependents often have a common theme of low self-worth and self-hating, either our bodies, our thoughts, our actions, and thinking that something's wrong with us. But it's really important to remember that nothing is wrong with you. We all make mistakes. We all go through ups and downs. Challenges will come in life, and we are allowed to feel our feelings. Our feelings are not facts, but they're a part of our human experience and allow us to empathize with others and also take care of ourselves in the best way possible. Finally, I included this picture of my last trip to Zim. Oh no. My last trip to Zim. And for the longest time, I was helping people in a way that I thought was productive, but I was building anger and resentment towards them. I wasn't owning my own reality. I was doing other people's thinking for them. And a couple of months ago, I was able to go to Zim, do some awesome work. The first time we did the Y&D live, and I was able to help people from a place of not resentment, not resenting the people around me. I was able to provide a helping hand to my family members, to my sister, and then also to people around me and in our community. And for the first time in a really long time, COVID included, I was able to genuinely and authentically show up as myself fully in a public setting and allow other people to see the growth that I've experienced over the past few years. And so I'm not saying that I am by any means perfect or the perfect example of a person who's completely healed from codependency. But what I wanted to illustrate is that there is a way out, and that it takes effort. It takes continuous choices to show up authentically as yourself, but it is possible. So now we'll take some questions. I think I've been sent some. We have some time for questions. So I'm just going to look at them on my phone, and I'm going to pick ones that I think might be the most helpful to all of you. Can we associate the lack of emotional boundaries with being an overthinker as we fail to own reality? I think, so one of the books I read on codependency talked about overthinking and anxiety as also symptoms and side effects of codependency. So when one's overthinking, it's an indication that you're not confident in your own reality, you're not confident in your own decision-making capacity, and you're not really confident in terms of self-esteem. And it's not saying that we need to quickly make decisions all the time, but overthinking is expending energy emotionally that in an unnecessary way. And so, yes, it is a show that you're not owning your own reality because you are so frightened of doing something wrong in the eyes of other people that you continue to overthink it and overthink it and overthink it. And I've been there, I've done that, and it's not helpful. So, yeah. On the issue of perfectionist behavior, is it really such a bad thing to try to deliver the best parts of yourself in anything you do and everything that you do? No, but who are you doing it for is who you need to ask. Are you doing well in school and putting an effort in your homework because you want to learn and you enjoy the actual material, or are you doing it because you want to impress someone else? Because it becomes unsustainable when it's done for other people. And I'll give you an example. My real depression really took its toll during COVID because I had graduated university. And so I no longer had the check mark to say that I was perfect or that I was doing well. I no longer had grades. I no longer had prizes at school. I was just an adult in the real world. And I really struggled with that because previously I had been a perfectionist and allowed 10 things that I thought, and my perfectionism was controlled by what other people thought. And so suddenly when I no longer had those things to reach for, my self-esteem was so low and I was depressed. And it's not to say that it's not good to want to achieve things, but to doing it for, as we get older, there are less and less checkpoints, like in school, when you get an A, or you get the prize, or you get your results back. In life as an adult, there are not often results. And your boss is also not going to tell you every 10 minutes that you're doing amazing. Like, as much as we love that, you're doing amazing, sweetie, you have to know it for yourself. And so that's my answer to that. Perfectionism, it's an insidious term, again, because it sounds like something that we should strive for, but for who is what we need to ask ourselves. A question: if you find yourself codepending on someone, what advice can you give to pull away from such a behavior or situation? So as I talked about, detachment is really important. Detachment is being able to create functional boundaries and asking yourselves key questions like, who am I doing this for? Am I actually being helpful in this situation? And is the situation harming me in my pursuit to help someone else? That's the way you'll also be able to tell between helpful help and unhelpful help. Unhelpful help is done at your own detriment and also doesn't really end up helping the other person. And feelings of resentment and anger are born out of unhelpful help. Which book is recommended for overcoming codependence? Someone asked. I really love Codependent No More. I joke with my friends that this book feels like a hug because it takes you through codependency. It teaches you about self-love. It really opens your eyes to the way that things that happen in your childhood can affect the way that you develop as an adult, but allow you to really think about how you've developed and forgive yourself and forgive the people around you for the ways that maybe they weren't there for you. And then another really good one it's by a man called John Bradshaw, and it's called Healing the Shame That Binds You. It's another one that really takes you through understanding shame, which is very interlinked with codependency, because codependency is a shame disease. And it's a fantastic book. If we have time in one of the weeks, I'll do a little bit of a review of what it is like I did today, except today's was long. So is the feeling of not wanting to hurt anyone, feeling not want anyone to feel sad because of what I do or how I act, a form of codependency? In many ways, I would say in the way that question is phrased, I would say yes, because if you are worried that you doing well in school or you making breakfast for yourself is hurting someone else, you are not, it's not owning your reality moderately. No one's going to die because you took the first sandwich. No one's going to die because you drove yourself somewhere instead of taking the time out the day to go and do all these errands for someone else. No one's going to die because you went to the library and you studied for your exam instead of sitting in your friend's room and listening to them cry. And so I think that's how you and it sounds extreme, but codependent thinking is extreme, thinking that you're responsible for someone else's feelings and that if your actions, there's a difference between hurting someone and there's a difference between taking actions in your own life to be your authentic self. And often when you're being authentic, people enjoy it. Trust me, I've noticed. So I'll answer one more question. How can we instigate detachment without offending the other party? Now, that is a codependent question, because as I explained, detachment is simply creating boundaries. I'm actually going to go back to the detachment slide so that I can just run home the point of what detachment is. I'm almost there. Detachment is based on the premise that each person is responsible for himself and that we can't solve problems that aren't ours to solve, and that worrying doesn't help. And so if another person is offended because you are not worrying about their problems, if another person is offended because you are not taking responsibility for their thoughts, actions, and feelings, that is an unhealthy dynamic. And if it was me, I would get out of that dynamic. I would go beyond detaching and do the cold turkey cut, because that's not a healthy relationship. And that honestly sounds like an abusive relationship. Not saying that that's what you have, but if that characterizes an abusive relationship. I think I'll answer one more because we're almost at 4:45. Okay. Okay, well, I have one question that I just thought not to answer. Let's just end there. But yeah, thank you for all your questions. I think we should find a way to do a question bank, and then maybe we can create a website and blog some of the questions, because I think some of them require a lot of time to answer, and we're out of time, unfortunately. But I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who show up. I think it's amazing to see people coming every week and really making the effort to take back your own lives. I am but a humble servant who's using my experience to give you hope and light and spread love. So thank you all for this amazing session, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks.
Thank you a lot, Miss Joanna, and you also have a wonderful weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, we have learned a lot actually, and Young and Dynamic values your feedback. So may you please type in the chat box what you want for us to improve or what you want to hear on Young and Dynamic also. I'll just run through some comments that I've seen in the chat box. Tinotenda Madondo from Use It says it's okay to feel how you feel at any point. And Joshua Anthony from Hit says powerful nuggets here. Salom Mukamba says every emotion is okay to feel, which is true. And Tulo says over attachment to others results in detachment from ourselves. This means that we have been following the session and we have really learned a lot. So thank you a lot, Miss Joanna. On to announcements for this week. Remember to comment and like on Young and Dynamics post on Facebook, Twitter, on Facebook and Instagram, and also make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Global Intercessors platform is available for your use 24/7, 365. So make sure that you connect at any time for you to be able to pray with others. Young and Dynamic continues next week, exactly at 3:45 p.m. Until then, goodbye. I am Desire Katera.